how are you this evening? Before I begin, don't forget to look at the moon as you leave the theater. The father of the winds was a man called Dovie. And he was an old man and blind. And he lived far, far, far in the ghost country with his sons. 4 sons, the winds, and his youngest son, Yamni, the whirlwind. Now, with such a household with 4, 5 such sons, it was the custom of today to walk alone in the ghost country, seeking silence and peace. As he walked in the ghost country, one night he felt a light in the sky. He was a blind man, an old man, and yet the light was so bright he could feel it on his skin. He felt, coming from that light, a warmth, something he had no words for. He held out his hand, felt his body washed with the light as the light came nearer and nearer until it hovered above the earth. He held out his hands and called out, "Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am the father of the winds, and you are welcome to this place." And a woman stepped out of the light. She was tall and dark, her hair long and dark. She was wearing a white dress covered with patterns and intricate and strange designs in all the colors you have ever seen, all the colors you can imagine, colors that had no names in that time, nor in this. She stepped toward him and touched his hands and said, "Thank you, good Father. Is welcome I feel." "Who are you then?" he asked of her, and she said, "I am Wope, falling star woman. My mother is the moon, my father the sun, and my people are the star nations. I have long been traveling. I do not know if this is my destination, but it is good to be welcome here." And he looked at her, reached out for her, and said, "Long have I waited for a daughter." "May it be so," she said. "We shall see." And as he turned and started to lead her back to his lodge to meet his sons he hoped would become her brothers, he began to sing a soft song. "I am an old man," he sang. "Long have I wanted a daughter. I am an old man. This is my prayer. May a daughter come, for then I will be cared for. May a daughter come, then my years, though long, will never be long enough. I am an old man. May this prayer be answered." Now, headed toward this lodge, he shared it with his son. Truth be told, you could smell it before you saw it. 6 men lived there alone. And when Wope got to that lodge, she bowed her head, and when in the entrance, she did not let her eyes meet the eyes of these unknown men. She moved as the sun moves in a circle, and she knelt and then sat in that place that is not the place of the guest of honor, but the place of the hostess, the woman whose lodge it is. She reached into a pouch at her belt, and from that pouch she pulled out a shell. And that shell glowed with luminous light. And as she held that shell in her hands, she said, "And are you hungry, my father?" Reaching across the fire, she placed that shell in his hand. And as the shell left her hand and into his, it was filled with all he desired. Filled with all he did not know he hungered for. And he ate and ate and ate until he could eat no more. And instantly, that shell was empty and clean. He handed it back to her, and now she did this for the first of his sons, his eldest son, the western son. And so, handing it to him, again it filled itself, but with different things. It was what he most wished for, what he most hungered for, and he too ate until he was filled, and then it was empty and clean. Again, she handed it to the north, to the east, and to the south, and at last to the littlest one, to Yamni, the whirlwind, and he ate loudly, he ate enthusiastically, and as soon as he was done, he threw the shell to her and started spinning and whirling about, saying, I love you, I love you, you are my sister, I love you. And he spun and spun and spun until the north wind, looking at that one, jumped up and struck him and held him down to the earth, struck him again until there was no breath in the body of that child. Whoopi looked at the north wind. How could one of such power be so cruel? And then she looked at Yamini's broken body. She raised him in her arms. She touched her lips to his lips. She gave him the life of her breath. And he opened his eyes and smiled at her and said, I love you. I love you. The north wind said, look at her. She is evil. Look at what she has done. This is not right. How can she do this thing? She is a witch. There is something wrong with her. And the west wind said, well, she has some power and a mighty good cook. The power is in the palate. Ah, yes, she is a witch, a good witch, a witch that is welcome to stay in this lodge. I am the eldest son, but I the strongest, said the north. The east wind said nothing. The east wind is lazy, and by that time, having eaten, was snoring. The south wind, his eyes were upon the earth. His eyes shifted to Yamini, dancing about the lodge, and he said nothing. The west wind said, I'm the west wind. Let me introduce myself. I like noise. A good drum. Nothing like a good drum. Let me show you. And he took out a drum and started banging it and beating it and banging it and beating it. And she thought surely he would make her lose her mind. But the north wind interrupted his brother and said, I am a warrior and a hunter and I am fierce. And she wanted no more words from him. The east wind was snoring. The south wind said, I delight in beauty. I like to see a thing that is fine and to make it as fine as I can, to make it better still if I can, to take the beauty I see about me and to spread it as far as I can in the world of my travels. And a smile came to Whoopi's lips. Time passed, and Tade moved into a lodge that Whoopi built for him beside that of his sons. Now he was free to wander more and more, for a sister had come to his boys, a daughter had come, his prayer had been answered. But after time, it was hard for these men to look at Whoopi as a sister. The north was the first to speak, though it was inappropriate, his brother being elder. The north said, you will not be a sister of mine. You will be my wife. Who wouldn't want me? I'll feed you well. I kill very well. I kill a lot. I like to kill. I delight in death. I will stack death around your knees. There will be no shortage of meat if you marry me. And she thought, there will be a shortage of life. And she would not look at him, shook her head. The west wind said, well, you might want to marry me. I like to dance. Yamini and I, we often dance. Let me sing you a song. And she thought, oh dear. And now she lowered her head, and there was a smile on her lips, but she shook her head before she lost her mind. The east wind woke to propose. You can marry me, or not. I don't care. Just don't bother me in the morning. I get cross when I'm bothered in the morning. I like to sleep in the morning. Just you. I don't care. She turned to the south wind. Now this was the one whose voice she wanted to hear. He looked at her and quickly looked away. He said, I delight in delighting. If there is a way that I can please you, if I can make your life better, then that will be the best use of my life. Well, she married him. And things were well for a time, but she felt the cold eyes of the north on her, though she had married his brother. And after a time, she said to her husband, "Husband, I fear your northern brother. Husband, I feel his cold gaze upon me. Husband, I believe I have become the cause of trouble between brothers. Trouble between brothers is a terrible thing. I will have no part of it. It's the thing once begun. It is hard to end. Husband, we must be away from this place." And he said, "If this is what you need of me, we will journey at this moment." And she said, "Tomorrow." And that next day they began to journey. They journeyed away from the ghost country. They began to move and move till they came to a softer, gentler country. And there they started to live. They put up a small lodge. And Hope was out one day, digging the turnip, the zipsala, the wild turnip, with her stick, when she felt a touch of cold on her back. Her husband was out setting snares to get food, or perhaps digging roots for dyes, for he loved to make things of great beauty. She felt the cold growing nearer. She felt and heard a howling behind her. She knew the north wind was coming to take what had not been given to him. She could not call for her husband, or the north wind would know where she stood. She could not run. The north wind cannot be outrun. And so she took off her robe. It was a beautiful robe that she had brought from the stars, a robe that was embroidered in patterns, intricate and strange, in all the colors you have ever seen, all the colors you can imagine, colors that still have no names for themselves. And she spread that robe upon the earth, and she crawled beneath it. She pressed herself against the earth, and she hoped she would be concealed, but the north wind saw that robe, and he knew its work. He started to pull and tear at it, and under his hands that robe became brittle and frozen and dead, and the color drained from it, leached from it, until everything was crisp and dead and lifeless and brown and of one tone. And now she could feel him getting nearer to her as he shredded and tore this robe. She pressed herself against the earth and cried out, "Mother, Ina, Mother, Ina Macha, Mother, my earth, take your daughter to your heart." And the earth opened up and took her in. And the earth closed over her body, and now the earth made that robe to stretch in every direction. As the north wind touched it, it would stretch, cold and frozen in the direction he touched. If he ran to another place, it would stretch in that direction until he grew frustrated, unable to get to Wope, and his cold touch moved to the earth that was standing beneath the feet of the south wind. The south wind knew what had happened. He came back. He did not see his wife. He saw the beautiful gift she brought from the stars, tattered and destroyed at his feet, and there was war between the two of them. Windy, wordy war between brothers. And they fought and fought, but the north is too strong. The south howled for his western brother, who came, and together they pushed the north wind back to the ghost country. They tied him to the lodge poles, but he cannot be restrained forever, and he cannot die. The east wind could not take this noise. It interfered with his sleep, and so he walked and walked until he came to the end of land, and there in the far sea he waits in a place where the morning light is soft and gentle, and where he walks easy unless disturbed early in the morning. The west wind was broken-hearted to have been a part of a fight with his brothers, so he walked and walked until the land ended beneath his feet, and he came to the waters of a place where the sun, when it disappeared in the sky, left colors as loud and brilliant as the music the west wind made. And the south wind went seeking his wife. He tore at her robe, he tore at his flesh, his eyes filled with tears, his heart sobbed out of his mouth. He cried for his wife, and she heard his voice, and he said, "Husband, husband, I came from the stars to find my home. Husband, I would not leave you." But he could not hear her. He wept and wept. His tears began to soften the frozen earth, and she cried out, "Husband, do you not hear my voice? Husband, do you not know I would never leave you?" But he could not hear her. So she sent up color from the earth. Crimson indigo, periwinkle, cerise, all the colors of strange names, all the colors that have no names yet today. And he saw those colors coming up, and he knew these were the colors she brought to the earth from the stars, and that she would not leave him. The north wind broke free, and the south wind, sometimes aided by the west, still goes to the north and confines him. But always the north breaks free, and always the west and south must push him back. But always the south comes back, and the earth grows green, and Wopi sends color up from the earth, and Yamni dances on the colors brought from his sister from the stars. And then he goes to the west, and so it is. Whirlwinds to this day always come from the south or the west. Storms early in the day will always be a thing of the east. But the cold, the killing cold, always comes from the north, for trouble between brothers is a terrible thing. A thing once begun, it is hard to end. And so the old people tell this story, one of our most important stories. And they tell me to tell you, in case you do not know, to not despair, and to never forget that the heart of the earth is a woman.